closing the topic of the Volyn tragedy. When in summer of 2018 the President of Poland came to our village of Olika on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the death of Polish citizen in the Volyn land, I made an extensive speech in which, along with thanking him for this, I also drew the attention of the presidents of Poland to the fact that modern Poland, as the legal successor of the previous Polish state, also bears, and perhaps bears, the main responsibility for the events that took place in the territory of Volyn in 1943. Its essence was as follows. Poland, together with Volhynia, which belonged to Poland, was illegally occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union in 1939. The Volynian land legally belonged to Poland until 1945, according to an agreement with the leader of the Ukrainian People's Republic Petliura and the Soviet Republic. Only in 1945 did Volynia legally pass to Ukraine according to an international agreement with Poland, which is in force to this day. Poland is also to some extent responsible for both Ukrainians and Poles who died before 1945, both at the hands of the OUN-UPA and from Poles. I am adding my speech. Here he is. I thank the President of Poland, Mr. Andrzej Duda, for visiting our city of Olika. Thank you for this speech at the former Catholic cemetery, for remembering the victims of the Polish nationality who were murdered 75 years ago. However, the entire large community of Poles, residents of the village of Olika, did not murdered. Perhaps then the inhabitants of the Polish village of Pokuta, which was located about 5 kilometers from Olika, and there, as I heard, there were 6 houses, were murdered. Perhaps they buried in this Catholic cemetery. It is pity that Mr. President did not mention the much larger number of innocent victims of the Jewish nationality shot in that same 1943 in Olika. There were also residents of the Poland that was occupied in 1939 by German invaders and Soviet troops. As a result of this occupation, a new war began in 1941, and Olika was occupied by the Germans. The Germans created a police force in Olika from Ukrainians. This German-Ukrainian police drove Jews to be shot. Apparently, such a terrible scene did not give these policemen peace, and soon they all fled into the forest with their weapons. created military detachments. The Polish residents of Olika complained to the German authorities, and a German detachment surrounded part of Olika and drove the Ukrainian residents of Olika into the castle. The Germans informed the surrounded residents about the complaint. The Germans intended to shoot all the surrounded residents, including their children. Peasants with carts and shovels were driven from the surrounding villages, who were supposed to bury the shot residents. By the way, this was in March 1943, before the tragedy of the Polish, the 75th anniversary of which we chronicle in July 2018. The Germans found no weapon on Bandera members in Olika, no one shot back, no one ran away, for which they announced that they would not shoot, but took all able-bodied people captivity to work in Germany. Then there was a tragedy for which the President Polish placed responsibility on the OUN, Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, and the UPA, Ukrainian Insurgent Army. The Polish president did not pay attention to the fact that the OUN itself, together with all its leaders, originate and developed precisely in the Polish state, which existed until 1939. And it is this Polish state that is also responsible for its creation. It was the Polish state that, with its policy, created the conditions under which all this happened. Ukrainians were not granted autonomy, their language and culture were despised. The decision of the conference after World War I to grant Galicia autonomy was not implemented. After all, the Soviet government gave some kind of, albeit formal, but still Ukrainian Soviet Republic, which stood above autonomy. Bandera, together with his group, seized power in the OUN by terror even before 1939, removed the leader of the OUN, Melnik, destroying the OUN members. Against the will of the German, he declared a state in 1941, which caused tens of thousands of repressions against Ukrainians. He went to fight against the founder of the UPA, Taras Borovets, disarmed part of his units, and destroyed the wife of Borovets himself, who was not Polish by nationality, but Czech. Taras Borovets was no angel. He led the German police in Polesia, but when he received an order from the Germans to expel the Jews, he did not carry out this order, but went into the forest with his people, which is why the UPA was created by him in late 1941 at the beginning of 1942. As a result, during the German occupation, 30,000 Ukrainians and 40,000 Poles were destroyed, who were civilians. The Banderiates achieved nothing. They only lost their soldiers, and the Ukrainian people suffered millions of repression from the Soviet authorities. Then a political struggle began, whose victims were greater. All this again beginning to reek of national hatred. Mr. President, there is no one to point fingers at anymore. It must also take some responsibility for ourselves. I am over 70 years old, but I was born after the war. We knew nothing about ethnic conflicts, liberation struggles, or the Holocaust, and 2 whole generations have already grown up. When I was little, I asked my father who is Banderiates were, and he remained silent. No matter how many times I asked, he never said a word. Later I realized that he was afraid. I will give some facts from my life. I used to try to actively engage in politics. When the Communist Party was already dissolved, after some time I joined the Ukrainian Republican Party, URP, founded by Lev Lukyanenko. Let his memory live on forever. In the presidential election in 1999, the URP party entered a bloc with other parties and movements, about 5 or 6. The OUN also entered this electoral bloc. Where this OUN was, I do not know. I did not know or had hear about a single members of the OUN or in our village and the surrounding villages during the years of independence. This electoral bloc nominated Yevgen Kirillovich Marchuk, the former head of the KGB and then SBU of Ukraine, as a candidate for President of Ukraine. As a member of the Election Commission, I was instructed to draw up several signature sheets to register Yevgen Marchuk as a presidential candidate. It was not difficult for me. I only walked 1 street and the letters were full. There were such cases. I suggested to one man to sign for Marchuk, and he read and says, "There is an OUN here, and they killed my grandmother." I tell him, "They did bad things, and you should treat them according to the law. Let them go to the elections." And he signed. I went to another one who held a good position. He was either in the UPA or the OUN, but when there was an amnesty, whoever comes out and goes to the front will be forgiven. He volunteered. He probably didn't make it to the front, Well, I think this one will sign without saying a word. When he read about the OUN, he started screaming like that. I remember that only saliva was splashing everything, and I didn't know how to quickly escape from that house. This was a typical attitude to those who were close to the OUN, towards this organization itself. Two brothers from one family were in the UPA. One brother fled home. His parents advised him to return because they themselves would be punished with death. And the son returned. Do you think they forgave him? They sentenced him to death. This was the attitude towards ordinary fighters. The third brother, who was still young, later caused this organization endlessly. None of the UPA members returned to the village alive. There is no worse punishment than spending so much time underground in bunkers. They were forced to carry out ethnic matters under the order of several fanatics who are not even remotely from Volyn. I declare, I know that all Volyn people deeply condemns the Bandera movement, especially close relative of former UPA members. I noticed that they all quickly left their village and went to other regions so that no one could think badly of them. But the heroization of this movement began. Bandera, who essentially spent this whole time in prison and probably almost never visited Ukraine in adulthood, became necessary as a slogan. That's why people try to hide their thoughts. I asked the library for materials. I wondered what his ideology was. There is nothing. They didn't find it. Once I was a course in Kyiv, and at the dinner table I spoke badly about Bandera. Then I withstood a strong attack against me from people who were not even close to the western Ukraine. I am ashamed that the Volyn tragedy is called Volyn. That's why I express my thoughts. The OUN originated in the Polish state, and the modern successors of that state bear direct responsibility for its actions, which took place during the illegal occupation of that state. The real liberation of Western Ukraine came only in 1945, when legal agreements were concluded with Poland for this territory. I thank the President of Poland for the wreath that stands near the chapel in the old cemetery. A few days later, I went to look at this wreath again, but apart from the wreath, I did not find a single monument, a single grave, or any inscription commemorating the innocently killed Polish citizens anywhere in the cemetery. And you, Mr. President, if you still come to Volyn, to Olika, don't forget to stop by the place where the Jews were shot and lay a wreath where the monument still stands. I posted my speech in the internet and I sent it translated into Polish to my friends in Poland. The consequences of my speech were: the President of Poland, Mr. Duda, sent his submission to the Constitutional Court of Poland, and the Constitutional Court of Poland issued a decision of this submission. Do not blame Ukrainians for the victims of 1943. It seems to me that I helped resolve a kind of historical dispute between Poland and Ukraine about responsibility for the Volyn tragedy of 1943. The Poles, together with President Duda, understood. Ukrainians have not yet understood this. I have still not found a repetition of my words in the press, even if this criticism or with similar conclusions. Somehow, my reproofs remained unnoticed to the President of Poland, who left a wreath in Olika for Polish victims, for forgetting to lay a wreath for the thousands of innocent victims, residents of our village of Olika of Jewish nationality, who were shot in that same 1943. They were also residents of that Polish state. They also contributed to the high development of our city, the history of which we are still so proud of. Thank you for your attention.